Hello neighbors, we're back with another video. This will be the exit interview for David Hernandez, who left the village rather abruptly and wanted a chance to speak to you as to the reasons why he left. And while I have the opportunity to have him here, we're also going to review some of the other things that he had been doing for the village, such as FEMA, the SIT, and other issues that I think would be good as a review. So hold on for now. I'll be back in a moment with David Hernandez. At 2:37 in the afternoon, I don't know how long it was up, but I doubt many people saw it. And she says, I understand that David Hernandez inappropriately instructed police staff to post his resignation letter on Nextdoor under the police department's Nextdoor profile. I ask that you all please make sure that David Hernandez does not continue to send parting comments to the community disparaging commissioners, and particularly that David Hernandez does not send such comments using village staff or resources. This is a repeating theme we'll get into in a minute. Please let me know who will be doing David Hernandez's exit interview, collecting his keys, credentials, computer, blah blah. Thank you in advance for your cooperation, rocks. So I guess this will be the exit interview for anyone that would be interested. David, why don't you actually read what you had sent for those who didn't have a chance to see it when it was posted.
For the record, the reason that I left as village manager was due to the hostile work environment that two commissioners created and subjected me to on a daily basis. This made it difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish the goals set forth by the commissioners and my commitment and responsibilities to serve the residents. Commissioner Ross constantly scrutinized all decisions that I made as manager. Her fake narratives to the village residents and her threats to expose my shortcomings became very personal and damaging to my reputation. Her harassment took a toll on my health, and as a result, I decided to resign as village manager. The final straw was having her husband contact my former place of employment to look for dirt on me. This forced me to make only one decision, which was to step down. Commissioner Kennedy's barrage of emails during my 5 months of tenure, over 11,000 of them, showed me that there was no appreciation for the effort I gave the village and using residents to advance his agenda. It's unfortunate that these two commissioners wasted time and resources attacking me during this COVID-19 pandemic to try to move forward their political agendas.
How are you feeling, by the way?
Health-wise, I feel excellent. I feel great.
You look great. Excuse me. Telemarketer. Okay, let me address one point because there was something that people won't understand on that 11,000 email count. From my experience in reviewing the way the IT department gathers data, anyone that is CC'd on an email, if it's forwarded, if it's a back and forth conversation, each of those count as one for that number. So it was not 11,000, but even if we took it down by a third or a fourth, it was still considered excessive emails over a short period of a couple of months.
I would use the word barrage of emails that I felt that I would get constantly.
We'll get more into that a little bit later. Another point I would like to make is I actually had a chance to speak with this individual that you had previously worked for or with and verified Ross's call, and we had a little bit of laugh, and that it was a failed fishing expedition, and that what he had to say to me regarding David is that any municipality would be lucky to have him. He's a doer, he gets things done. He did mention for balance that you can smell BS a mile away and don't basically tolerate that. And maybe that's part of the problem that you had with the Rosses. But this was where this started, at least as it seems to me, dating back to the 1st of May, where Rox writes to you after a public service announcement video. I have a real problem, David, with your use of village resources, log cabin, equipment, YouTube, staff support, to promote yourself for the position of village manager, and further, that your self-promotion advertisement comes to me from a village blogger, yours truly. While I am grateful for all your efforts as interim manager in this health crisis, if you continue to disseminate your advertisement, you will force my hand to communicate your very serious shortcomings for the full position of village manager. It would be awkward for everyone involved, which indeed it has turned out to be. Now, one thing I will add just from my perspective is no one commissioner has any authority on the use of the log cabin, equipment, YouTube, or staff time, as that falls under the domain of the manager, which handles employees.
That is correct.
Commissioners do not run daily operations, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Your response to her email was, thanks for your opinion, with 7 question marks.
That is correct.
Of which she then responds back the following day, David, I consider this excessive use of punctuation the equivalent of screaming. Now, Rox, that's not how the internet works. All caps would be considered screaming, not punctuation, so maybe make note of that point. I find it rude, unprofessional, and uncalled for. I worry that this is a communication style you employ with other residents, vendors, contractors, service providers, and employees. It reflects poorly on you and our village, as poorly as your 3 repeated expletives, F-bombs in parentheses, heard at the conclusion of the 422 meeting before the tape was edited for publication. I have no way to verify if that's correct or not. Do you remember anything to that end?
That's incorrect.
And I find it interesting and that an email from the 20th, where Rox was responding to a resident which stated that they were extremely happy with the job that you were doing during the state of emergency. You and the chief have been proactive in shutting down essential functions, communicating to the residents, just basically a letter of support for you, where Rox communicates back to this individual that effective communications and actions taken in this community that installs a sense of confidence in public safety. It is a testament to David and Lewis's leadership skills. Their collaboration, proactive planning, and flexible use of staff were most needed, and they're serving the village beyond previous expectations. So you see there's a bit of a disconnect for many people as to what is true and what is not. But let's move on from that. Let's move to July 21st, where I received a very peculiar response from the Miami-Dade Ethics Department tying into the video in question we just spoke about, where Rox was obviously not pleased with you taking a time to address the residents. And this was addressed to myself and Ross. I don't know why I was copied on this. I did speak to the investigator at Ethics as to why am I on this. I had nothing submitted. Certainly I knew there was nothing wrong with the video that you had done. I don't think anyone took offense save her. But it is what it is, and that is good morning. After reviewing the YouTube video made by interim manager David Hernandez, it was determined by the advocate that the interim manager was within his rights to make and release the information video to village residents regarding what is happening in the village. While I had her on the phone as an investigator, I read what I just read to you regarding the comments made on this video and asked her if she deemed them to be a threat, which she agreed she did. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you were working on, and I want to hear your side on several things. We'll start with FEMA and then the hurricane season and move on from that, if that's okay with you.
Well, may I comment on
Of course.
ironically, when this was happening, I had a phone call from Commissioner Kennedy and asked me that he wanted to talk to me privately. And that conversation was kind of awkward because the conversation didn't take place at City Hall. The conversation took place outside City Hall here in the log cabin because he felt like he didn't want to have anybody to see me. But he felt that that the fact that she said that she was going to expose my shortcomings was something that maybe I should use more of a approach of going to her and kind of like, you know, putting water over the bridge, softening it up, try to talk to her and make ends meet, because, you know, he basically told me you don't want to get her on the bad side. And I said to Commissioner Kennedy, look, Commissioner, to be honest with you, I feel that each commissioner vote is 20%, okay? but she's talking about mending bridges, and I think that what she's actually doing is attacking a manager and not letting a manager do his job. So I think that I don't take things personal, because I think that everybody has their own opinion and their own thought process.
Sure.
But I do believe that when she goes out to expose my shortcomings and to actually make it difficult, if I was to choose to run for city, to opt to run for the position of the manager, I realized that she was already trying to eliminate me.
Does that sound like pandering to you, or did you perceive that was pandering?
I felt that, yes, I felt completely that that would be a way of pandering, because I couldn't understand why we couldn't have met at my office. But as a manager needs to take actions and need to make decisions. And when I was put into this role, I wasn't going to take a role to be a politician.
Correct.
I took a role to be a manager, to make decisions, to keep the village moving forward. That was the purpose of being sitting as a manager.
In hindsight, though, would you agree now that it does take a certain amount of, be it correct or not, political savvy to negotiate with small town politics?
Yes, but I think I think the other commissioners didn't behave that way.
Well, let's talk about that. Since you had 5 bosses,
Correct.
and each have no more voting rights than another, including the mayor,
Correct.
why don't you just give a brief rundown of what your experience was during your time, not as Public Works Director, where I guess you were more insulated from dealing with the commission somewhat, but what was your experience, with the commissioners that you were working with?
I can start, let's say, with the mayor, a gem, a lady, very smart, very witty, understood everything that was coming, that we could, we could agree to disagree, but it was very always an open book, very, just a gem. Commissioner Tudor was very intrigued, very in tune of what's happening in the city, has a lot of knowledge, has more knowledge than what a lot of people will probably give him credit.
Right.
Both Virginia, just like Dan, just like Will, they all gave me the backing of saying, we believe in what you're doing, we don't need to micromanage you, we don't need to be overlooking, over your shoulder,
Right.
and just keep plugging along, keep moving forward. It was very easy. They were always, they would call me, probably, Virginia would probably call me maybe once every other day. How's it going? Is there anything you need? Will Tudor the same? Dan Samarian the same? But the other two, mostly when they would call, it was all about bashing or trying to undermine the other commissioners, always trying to tell me that they don't know what they're doing, they don't do their homework, they have no clue, that, they're just, I remember one time Kennedy basically told about Commissioner Samarian that he's like a nobody, he doesn't do his homework, his vote shouldn't even count. And I remind him, just like I reminded him and I reminded Commissioner Rocks, each commissioner has 20% of the vote.
Correct.
And both of them kept telling me, I need to step down, I'm the one that's holding back, I'm the one that's not letting the city move forward, it's my fault, because they're not allowing them to go and vet for a city manager. And I kept telling them that my job is not to tell a commissioner how to vote.
Correct.
My job is not to sway a commissioner or to just, my job is to give facts.
Correct.
And I felt that they were always trying to persuade me so I could persuade them that I need to step down so they could do what they want to do.
Which leads to, well, thank you. Let's talk about, though the contract states that the village manager is not a 9 to 5 job, so it is a little more of a service where you have to be available as needed. But give me a sample weekend of calls, volume of calls, number of calls, what happened if you didn't immediately respond to calls, when they would start in the morning, and the nature of calls, especially on, say, a Sunday when there's no work to be done and that we have no one here to do anything, and short of if these were considered emergencies on your end or what they were, because I heard there was a tremendous amount of volume. Again, within 11,000 emails, that's not a true number, but even again,
No, I mean, I could tell you specifically on a Sunday, I remember 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday, getting phone calls from Commissioner Kennedy asking me, does this house have a permit? They have a boat parked in the middle of the house, or they have some trailer and they don't have a permit. How do we know? What are we doing about it? What are we gonna do about it? And subsequently, phone calls like that. Calls like code enforcement calls on a Sunday, probably 10 or 15 of them.
Now, did you explain to him there's nothing that could be done on a Sunday and to not maybe hold over till Monday and then we deal with it then? Or if so, how was that met?
It was met through, after the conversation was met through another email, and then he was subsequently sent an email, then I would subsequently send it to code enforcement, and then I would ask code enforcement to follow up on a Monday. But the complaint from the resident would come in on a Sunday, and they wanted answers, and then that's where all those emails would started to get tied in between 2 and 3 and 4 people on Sundays. Oh, they're still out here, they haven't done anything. Why isn't code enforcement out here? Why is the city manager, why can't the city manager be out here and stop them from pouring?
It's Sunday.
Yes, it's Sunday.
You have 30 plus years in municipal government experience, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever heard of anything like this before in your experience on the weekends?
No. The only thing that I work, and I believe, there are calls that somebody gets as an emergency, and I'll give you an example. If a gas line busts,
Yes.
breaks, totally understandable. If a water line busts, I totally understand. If we have huge trim, power lines that knock down trees, those are things that we use on a Sunday. That's an emergency.
Correct.
But not a 7:30 phone call to find out if somebody has a permit to see if they can paint the right color. They're painting the house the right color.
We are now back in hurricane season and dodged a storm a couple weeks ago, I believe, thankfully. How are we set up, in your opinion, now that you are gone? Who would be the go-to person for this? Who has any training or experience to handle the village so we don't find ourselves in the errors made during Hurricane Irma?
Well, you have Luis Cabrera. Thank God you got Luis Cabrera as
And he is trained in
police chief.
emergency management.
Yes, he is.
And so are you.
Yes.
And I believe so was the mayor. And I've been scratching my head as to what has been this personality clash. You took over right around the COVID time.
Correct.
And we went under CLEMP and emergency management, which of course takes the commissioners a little bit out of the picture, in that they are not trained in emergency management procedures, and you trio are and were. And in reading, again, public records during this time, and I'll have more on a future post with details of this, it appeared that in Rox Ross's case, that she was communicating repetitively about feeling left out and not being in the loop and not being, the communication wasn't what she either was used to or what it wanted, though this was, again, a global pandemic unlike this world has ever dealt with. I understand she tried to leverage you to open up services before the chief, as incident commander, thought it was prudent for protection of life and safety issues because people were reaching out to her that needed something done, and they seemed a bit tone deaf as to that we're limited, we have limited staff, but it seemed that there was a persistency to push you to do things.
There was a persistency to push me because some people were trying to do their closings on their houses. And since we shut down our inspections, she pushed me so I could come up with some other procedure to create some other temporary certificate of occupancy.
Correct.
So some of these people could get their certificate. And then when I created something like that to go out of my way, I remember Laura Graves calling me and saying, "No, thank you, David, at least, you're trying to do something." But again, then because we didn't have inspections, they would have to get their own inspector, and then they realized that cost was more than what the city would charge, and then she got upset, Rox Ross, saying that we shouldn't be charging them, and she kept pushing that agenda for some of her friends.
So technically, you were able to solve it, albeit a couple of weeks after the needs that some of the residents were posting.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about your involvement with FEMA, which had a much more favorable outlet, as I wrote on the blog in my closeout to the FEMA story, than we had want, but it's been a little confusing for some the way the story's being told through the rumor mill as to who was responsible for what and when. Very briefly, as a recap, the initial claims that we had submitted, which was just over $1 million, were summarily denied for the village violating a series of state and federal laws and mandates and how it was presented to them. Time passes by, we get these letters, we go into additional costs with the attorney to appeal this, and then of course we got what, $115,000, $117,000 first, which was a partial payment with another $200, and I'm going from memory, excuse me, $239,000 in the queue, but they needed the tickets, I guess.
Yeah, apparently what happened was that, and it was kind of tough for me because at the beginning, nobody told me, I knew that there was an issue, but nobody gave me any guidance. I had to figure it out.
So the previous village manager did not keep you abreast or get you up to speed with what had been done up to that point, or
no,
it just was incomplete?
No, I wasn't. I was out of the loop because I was still Public Works. Remember that once I became city manager, I had to start fresh. I had to get my feet wet. I had to realize where am I doing, what's going on, who do I need to deal with FEMA, what's going on with KPMG, what are the players? Right. So that's, while I was working on that, COVID came around in March of 16, so I started in February. Okay. So it was tough to get not just COVID under control, because that hit us, quickly. But then I still had to get my feet wet in reference to what was going on with CITT, what was going on with FEMA, and I had to get my feet wet and obviously keep the city running.
Correct.
Because also we had the issue of safer at home, that created 30 to 35% more of solid waste.
Yes.
And it was tough on the solid waste people, plus some of those solid waste people were getting sick and they were getting COVID.
Right.
So it was tough to deal in those 3 to 4 months. I had to deal with pretty much 3 to 4 different topics.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I had to be overseeing Public Works. So it was tough to get my hands around, but no, Nobody told me where to go, what to do. You know, I had to figure it out on my own.
And as you and I talked about this, because I wanted to be up to date with FEMA to finish writing about it as I had done since the beginning of this, you had told me at one point that you thought the best we could hope for as far as receiving money would be the money in the queue,
Right.
which was approximately, say, 240K,
240K.
plus the 115 that we had already received. And I said, well, where's the rest? And then, of course, that was the question. But you were able to dig or to, backtrack the money. Explain how you found these tickets they were looking for.
I realized that I started putting two and two together. I figured, you know, what did I do? What was come Hurricane Andrew, the first hurricane that I went through.
Right.
And then I realized how FEMA works, and I understand their thought process. So I realized that here there had to be two types of companies. You had Grubbs,
Yes.
and then you also had Waste Pro picking up. So I started realizing, and I said, well, wait a minute. Sometimes people, they go mingle, they mix and match. But I also realized that there had to be somebody that got paid. So I realized that I started tracking the money,
Right.
and then I realized that Waste Management had gotten paid over 100 and something thousand, and then I realized that by going through Waste Management, they had to have at least the tickets.
Right.
And I was able to clock those tickets, which is the tipping fees, and I was able to went through each and every one of them to match the tipping fees.
Now, excuse me, Peabody, who we hired to do the monitoring, as well as H2O Partners, which turned out to be a shell of two people in Texas, from what I understand.
Yeah,
You had tried to get the tipping fees from them,
correct.
but they wouldn't respond, or
They just didn't respond.
Okay, so at one point you felt that we couldn't. Where were these fees? Because this is what was needed to unlock the rest of the money.
Right, well, again, I had to start digging and digging and digging, and I found it. But these people they did not reach out to me. I reached out to them.
Right.
And I reached out to FEMA, and I reached out, and FEMA kept telling me, until we get these tickets, you know, but if we don't get them, we're not gonna be able to match them. So I started going from backwards, you know, I started following the money.
Our payment back, we spent what, $985,000?
985, which
And-
that includes everything. I mean, that would include even your public works overtime, personnel.
And we're getting back roughly $666,000.
Roughly. I mean, I don't take it all as my credit. I think that everybody worked a little bit on it. What I did was, I was just the final push.
Well, thank God you followed the money trail, and I guess that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
Anything else on FEMA that you'd like to discuss?
No, I don't look at myself as taking credit for anything. One thing that I loved about this job was, and I can mention it. I don't have a problem mentioning it. The passion, like say like the barbecue, who has passion to go out there and to do things for the village, like to do the medians and the butterfly garden and stuff like that, where you got other people that just sit there and just criticize, but they don't do anything, you know? So you see the things that I missed, seeing those people,
Right.
actually the positive people that actually are giving positive results to the village, who care about the village. Yet you still have a few that just, you know, point fingers.
And I think that's somewhat just small town living. I
I know.
follow a blogger in North Bay Village, and some of his stories he writes about their issues are so similar to what we had through the previous administration that it seems like it's maybe a little bit bigger scale, but the same basic, fighting for power, corruption, and just things that really aren't focused on the people as much as egos and legacy or resume issues, which really isn't the focus, but it is what it is. Let's move to a little more of a current topic that is not yet resolved, and that's the FDOT program and what was involved from your knowledge on what you had done, because I know you had gotten or negotiated a higher amount of money potentially for a project.
The whole FDOT was basically the reason for FDOT was, there was two reasons why I got hired. One was FDOT, and the other reason was hurricane.
Yeah.
I walked in through this door, and at the time, the manager asked me, do I have experience and do I have knowledge of do I know people? I've worked for the government for 30 years. And I've worked in public works and different departments, different directors. And during my tenure, I realized that I had that experience. Mind you, I wasn't looking for a job. In fact, since I left the city of Miami, I haven't applied for anything.
You're quite tan. I noticed you must have been getting some raise.
It just happens. But then the manager had asked me if I had that experience, and I said, yeah, I do. I have a lot of female experience, hurricane experience, and I have a lot of experience in government and public works. So he asked me to come in, and the first thing that he asked me was, look, I just met with the District 6 Secretary and with the Commissioner, and I really don't understand none of this, so can you take the lead on this? And I looked at him, yeah, this is easy. He says, okay, well then just go ahead, take the lead. And then I asked him, well, what is it that you want? And he says, well, we want to see if we can get sidewalks. So I told him, that's it? You just want sidewalks? He goes, well, yeah. He goes, well, you can get more than that if you want. I mean, what do you mean? Well, you can get sidewalk, drainage, lighting, landscaping, I mean, you name it, you can get it.
Right.
And he says, really? Yeah. So the old mayor came to me and said to me, how could you do that? And I said, it's easy, you just gotta know how to do it.
Right.
And then I went ahead and I started I went to FDOT, I had meetings, after meetings, after meetings, after meetings, and at the beginning, they were only gonna put sidewalks. And I think the project was slated for like 800,000. And I told them, look, if they're gonna put in sidewalks, you need to put crosswalks. You gotta put in drainage. You gotta put in lighting. And I also wanted those intermediate lights that you have, which is mid-cross lighting. Yes. Which is the flashers and stuff like that, to slow down traffic. And we started, the project started like that. Then July came around, and I would meet with each commissioner, and I would explain to the commissioner what was going on at the time. They all knew, Betsy, whatever, Jenny, and Kristen knew what was going on. So they were pretty much started the design. They got a new design team, and as the design team started, they started doing the design team, then they came in with the 30%. And they had the 30% that came over. We met with Christian. They liked all the improvements. Christian was very happy that I was able to get lighting and this and that, whatever. And then as I came in as the city manager, they were already about to complete the 60%. I think it was in April, but in April COVID came in. So I told them, hey, listen, you guys got to present this to the commission. Right. And they said, well, how are we going to do it? And then I decided, now that I'm the manager, I decided to bring in the FPL people first so they could explain to them the overhead to underground, and then I wanted FDLT to come in.
Let's back up just 1 second. Did the previous manager relay any reason, since the sidewalk component of the plan seems to be, and even though it doesn't affect me, I don't live on that street, I would not, had I vote on the issue, approve it because of the turmoil it's caused and the crazy incitement being done by some on the issue of sidewalks, which the village was never designed to have. Was there a bunch of residents on 6th Avenue that were demanding sidewalks? I never heard in my 25 years here any issue about having a sidewalk on 6th. So
no.
But and then I've also heard, which I want you to verify or correct, that if we don't do the sidewalks, we couldn't get other components of the plan like the drainage. Do you know if that's true or not?
That's incorrect.
Okay.
In other words,
where do the sidewalks come from?
The sidewalks was the idea of Christian and the idea of Harvey Bill, who had discussed that it would be a good idea to get sidewalks.
Do you know if either of those people had approached before it came to a boiling point, the residents that would be affected by this, to see what they thought?
No one.
Because as you say, the commission was well informed. I don't remember as a resident much information other than
No.
this was somewhere years in the making, and that this was not a brand new plan that happened when you got there. It had been from the previous administration, correct?
No, my marching orders were simple. You know, I go directly with exactly what I'm supposed to go with, and try to get the best I can. And I was just following orders to try to get the best, the most we can. As I became city manager, since I was pushing the project and telling FDOT to get it done, get it done, get it done.
Right.
They finished, they ended up getting the 60% faster than what everybody thought, because I was on it.
Right.
And so, but no, I never got a resident that ever called me. The first call that I got was when I was a city manager, was a lady by the name of Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
And she just told me that, why are you throwing this in my face? And I said, I'm not, it's just part of what I was told to do.
Well, you would have had to pay attention closely to even know it was going on until it became a thing, and now I believe the project is
I heard now the project is
on the shelf, I
on
guess.
the shelf.
Maybe that's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Speaking of lighting, this is something you and I have talked about before, because we had, and I'd like you to explain for the viewers, the situation with FPL and what's happening with the old-fashioned lights we have versus the new lights that they're going to be moving towards, like it or not, and some of the reason and pros and cons behind that, because I know you did an installation of, I guess, one light or two lights as a pilot.
We did a little pilot program on 10th Avenue when the committee, the safety committee was, advisory safety committee, and they decided to put 10 lights. We put in 10, what we call LEDs.
Yeah.
The majority of the lights, the 178 lights that you guys have here in the village, they're pretty much open bottom, high pressure sodium vapor open bottom. And but we did change about 10 of them. I received a good feedback from 10th Avenue. They liked them, except I think I received 2 people that didn't like.
There were a few.
There were a few, but I received like 3 emails. I remember one was from Mr. Olivera, I'm not sure, who lives on 117th and 10th. He wasn't really happy with it. But yeah, eventually, FPL, the problem with the existing lights that you have now, they don't make them anymore.
Okay.
So it's very difficult for them to even maintain that type of light, because it's just not manufactured anymore. So that's one of the reasons that FPL would probably encourage to swap them out.
Which they were doing at no cost to the village, correct?
Correct. That would have been no cost to the village.
Okay.
The question is, there's 3 types of lights. There's the 45s, and then there's a higher wattage, and then there's this medium wattage, and the ones that we put out there were the medium ones. But there's still some that are lower that can be swapped out.
Okay. And this would also result in a savings, I assume, because LEDs are more energy efficient.
Well, yeah, the energy cost right now per light, you're paying roughly $27, $28 a light. If you would switch them out, you end up paying probably anywhere between $16 to $17 a light. It's a 35% savings.
Which could allow us to stay within budget, money to perhaps install more lights for areas as a safety issue.
Yeah, because we pay FPL somewhere, I think it's $25,000 is what we pay the village.
Okay, thank you, because I think that needed to be clarified. Let's move towards the CITT, because I find that you got straddled with CITT as Sharon Ragunan got straddled with the CAFR, which was convenient for those who wanted to use it as a fault for both of you, but had been actually problematic well before either one of you got here, and you both got about the same treatment on that. So what's up with the CITT funds, and what can you tell us about that?
Listen.
And first off, what they're supposed to be used for.
You got two types of funds, transportation and transit. The transit portion of it is what we used to call it it's basically the ridership, the train, the trolley.
Right.
Okay. Years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, you guys had the trolley.
Yes.
That was cut off for political reasons. And that hasn't come back in 4 years, and that money's been sitting there and hasn't been spent. So in my first meeting with here, when I became Public Works Manager, I remember talking to the manager. I said to the manager, these funds are restricted. You can't use these funds.
Right.
And then there was a few commissioners that wanted to use those funds because they're sitting there, but they're restricted. They're only going to be used for transportation and or something that can be used. Could they be used for changing a bus stop? Yes, because it's a transit. But the money was never spent. So the county basically said, look, if you're not going to use it, we're going to take it back.
Right.
But before that happened, I said, well, listen, I have a very good rapport with the director of CITT, who's not just a friend, a co-worker. And I said to him, listen, I need a favor. I go, what? Listen, I just became city manager. I don't know how these 3 new commissioners feel about it, because I have a brand new board. You need to give me a chance so I could talk to them and explain to them what they could do. And maybe they don't want a trolley, but maybe they want like what they call a freebie, which is a lot that you see in other cities that they move around like a little, kind of like a golf cart.
Right.
And then that money is sitting there, hasn't been touched for like 3 or 4 years. I said, well, David, that money, if you don't touch it, we're gonna take it back. And then the transportation, which is more of the paving. I used a little bit of that for the speed humps.
Yes.
Okay. And then obviously they put a hold on that because they asked us in 2017 for an audit. And the previous manager never did complete the audit. Never really attempted to do the audit. So when 18 came around that the audit wasn't done, in 19, it was pretty much in October, he had sent a letter to the previous manager saying, we need an audit, we need to do an audit. The audit was never done. Then all of a sudden, in February, since I became city manager, he wrote a letter to me saying, we're gonna pull the funds out. Well, I told him, don't do that yet, because I just started here. Give me some time. So I had set up a meeting for March 16th, which that's the same day that COVID started.
Right.
And we had to do the shutdown and the whole city safe at home and all that. So it took me a while, it took me like 3 weeks, 4 weeks to set everything up through Zoom. And since I had a good rapport with him, I asked him, listen, man, give me a break on this. Give me some time so I can figure this out.
Right.
So he goes to me, David, you guys haven't done anything. And I go, no, we have done things. I know that for a fact. He goes, well, what have you done? I go, well, we've put in local drainage, we've put in excavations, we've done some sidewalks, we've done things. He goes, well, how much do you think we've done? He goes, well, with the naked eye, I would say about 250,000 with the naked eye. But where are they? I go, well, I gotta find them. I gotta look for them. So, but he goes, yeah, but they're looking for the old stuff. We're looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
And then that's where the whole thing that Chuck said that I know where they are and I'm gonna go over there and start looking for this and that. He's going.
Well, most people watching won't know anything about
Right, yeah, well, he didn't know what he was looking for. Anyway, so subsequently I called him up and I said, listen, if I'm able to work something out with you. Which pretty much what we were gonna work out, was that, there was some work that was done.
Right.
And I was able to prove some of that, but not the 800 and something thousand that was frozen.
Okay.
And that was another argument that I had with the Commissioner Ross, because she kept saying, well, they're frozen. Well, I'm not gonna, if you give me my word, he's telling me, look, don't touch any more CITT
Right.
until we figure this out, because it's not right, until I get that money back, or if you're not gonna use it, we need to get it back. So I asked for an extension. He obliged, he was gonna give it to me. I also knew that I was gonna get another extension because I'd already talked to him about it.
Okay.
So he gave me another 60 extension. And I know that during that extension, we had already had our communication chat. I have my presumption of why that money was not around. That, I would like to keep it internal. I don't want to open up or say something that might be construed, but I have my own feelings of why that was not, money is not there. But I hope that they're able to take care of it. I know that the last extension was July, I got an extension for July 30th. I know that's been elapsed. I don't know, I haven't talked to him after that. I've been out of the city, so I don't know where that is at, but I know that there was funds frozen, and that's where, and we're working to work out a deal. And I had pretty much a deal worked out, but.
Talk about Public Works a little bit, and I'm curious, why did you make the decision to resign from both positions you were running, as opposed to if the issue emanated from dealing in the politics of it, which you agreed you don't enjoy doing, or why did you leave the village totally as opposed to going back and taking over Public Works as you had done, which I didn't hear any of these complaints prior to becoming interim manager. So what happened with you there?
For the last, I think it was the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, all I kept getting was phone calls from, say, Mac Kennedy's partner. I would get a phone call from the Bob Andersons, I would get phone calls from, Fred Jones. I would get phone calls from a lot of David Raymond, that I was an obstruction.
Really?
I was an obstructionist, and that I was not letting the process move forward so they could vet for a village manager.
No, that's not your call, that's a commission's call.
Correct. And, I remember even a phone call that lasted, even a phone call that lasted for like 4 hours or 3 hours with Matt Kennedy's partner. And he kept telling me that the best thing, the right thing, what you need to do is step down. You need to step down. And I started thinking about it. I said, well, let me tell you something. Nobody tells me what to do. But I do have to admit one thing. My blood pressure was getting to it.
Right.
And I felt that, it's kind of like, if somebody doesn't want you in your house, should you go to the back and have a barbecue in the back? If you ask me right now, look, David, I don't want you in my house, do you think I'm going to feel comfortable sitting in the back?
These are internal problems that we need to deal with, or we're just going to keep rinsing and repeating, I believe, the same cycle, which isn't servicing the client. This isn't about the people, it's not about the community, this is about seemingly egos and control and power.
That's really what it is. Or you have a manager that manages, or you have a strong mayor. It's either or.
Right.
Because what I've experienced with these two commissioners is that they want power. They want their agenda. And if their agenda is not served, then they point out that the other person's agenda is wrong. So if they feel like their agenda is more important than I don't know, Kennedy feels that his agenda is more important than, let's say, Will Tudor's agenda. Yet the irony is, it's 2020, 2020, 2020.
We've had that here going back years long before you got
Yeah.
here. So this is, again, I think just small village or small community problems that.
But they need to let the manager manage.
Do you feel that there was meddling from either residents, and we don't need to list names, but into your function? Because as I said, commissioners primarily create policy and oversight, though that swings wildly, not enough or too much. And residents really don't have to say much in this at all, other than who they elect, as that comes due. So, but it seems like there's an inordinate amount of meddling
Without a
into the
doubt.
day-to-day operations, which slows you down from what you're trying to accomplish, especially running two departments.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Any
Any idea or any suggestions how we could maybe deal with that and correct that moving forward, so we don't keep repeating the same ways?
It's very difficult because, a resident sends an email to a commissioner, then the commissioner sends the email to the manager sends the email to the proper department, and then the commissioner tells the resident that it's gonna be taken care of in a few days, when they don't even know what the issue's all about, and the issue might not be a village issue. In other words, if you try the approach of micromanaging, which some of these commissioners try to do, that's not gonna work. And that's exactly what happens. Some of these commissioners, because of their ego, they wanna micromanage.
Well, like I said, we've erred in not doing that and had problems. We've erred in doing it too much and had problems, so I don't know where the happy medium is to be found. Last I have on my list is some of the changes made to the code department. I understand that this is still a work in progress, but shifting it over to the police department as our largest budget area, and also getting it further away from having manipulation of the code officer by the electeds. Maybe they'll be a little more insulated on the other side.
I believe in that.
And again, Lewis has proven, our chief of police, to be, in my opinion, the best administrator this community has ever seen. Tell me how that decision came to be, and what you think the benefits could be.
That decision came, as you know, I have a very good working relationship with Lewis. And not just because I've known him, but as a professional, the city's blessed to have Lewis. Just completely blessed. That decision came as my conversations with him. Me and Lewis talk a lot, and we were always looking for ways to, how do we make it better?
Right.
I know that, that's a conversation I don't mind having on a Saturday afternoon with Lewis, talking about the village, because we would sit there and talk about what is it that we can make it better. But we both are in the frame of mind, it's never about I or him or me, or the word I never came across. It was always about how could the village improve? And I thought that was one idea that Lewis brought it to my attention. And I said to Lewis, Lewis, it makes a lot of sense, because there's more teeth involved, and then you're going to have less politics involved.
Hopefully.
I believe so.
Okay, good.
I strongly believe so. I would love them to know that anything that they need, even our interim village manager, if she needs to get a hold of me, any questions, I don't hold any grudges with anybody. I want this village to move forward, because I never thought about when I was brought up to this position, I just wanted the city to keep moving forward. That was the only reason I said yes to the position, because to me it was never about the title or the money, none of that.
Well,
I just always wanted,
you did a lot of positive things, in my opinion. And, you know, the public service announcements, I believe, were very, the timing was needed. We needed to have a sense of direction since we were dealing with a health crisis that we've never had to before. So certainly, we had to kind of, you know, make things up as we went, I guess, from your perspective. But we didn't get any hot spots, we didn't get any clusters. We've been pretty well managing everyone's health.
I didn't, remember that when I started, it was more like, you know, we hadn't had a contract with Waste Pro, that all of a sudden we had the Safer at Home. What was going through my mind was, my God, there are more people at home, there's more bulk out there. What happens if these people decide to walk? You know, and I don't have a contract. I gotta do something, you know? I remember sitting with the mayor and telling the mayor, we have to shut down. You know, how do I shut down all the services yet keep the services going?
Or the essential services.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I was put in a very tough decision. I was put in a very tough spot. But then again, you know, with the help and with the teamwork that I had, Louis, the mayor, Commissioner Tudor, Dan Samaritan, you know, there were people there that supported me to make sure that we were, you know, that we weren't there to fail, that we were there to keep going, to keep the city moving forward. And that was one of that was one of the joys that I got from this job.
This has run on probably a little longer than I had intended, but any last words you'd like to say to the residents?
Thank you all for my support, for giving me your support. I wish all the village the best, and I will always have a peace in my heart of this village. And again, thank you all. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to help.
Thank
and be
you
a part of it.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
We'll do an air one.